All right. How many of you have jobs lined up? Cool. Then you're like me. 10 years ago, I graduated from Virginia Tech, 2008. And when I graduated college, I did not have a plan. I went to work in my hometown, bartending for a few months. And then I had previously done an internship at the CBS affiliate in Altoona, Pennsylvania, WTAJ. And the news director called me up and said they have a photojournalist position open. I didn't know what that was. I, probably like you, had my hands on a camera maybe once or twice for various classes that I took at Virginia Tech, but I didn't know what a photojournalist did. So without any experience, I went in to the job interview, and I was given a camera and an assignment to do to see if I could, be a photojournalist. And I think I took 4 out of focus blue shots of like a street or something, because that was the assignment, like there's street construction. It didn't really matter. The news director thought that I had the right attitude for the job, and I guess I had a degree, so that showed that I am trainable at the job. And I'm the chief photographer now at NBC2 in Fort Myers, and that's what I look for. We a lot of the times have positions open at our station: photojournalists, editors, production assistants, MMJs, the people that do the reporting. And we're constantly looking for people that don't necessarily have, this reel that shows all their talent, but they're trainable at the position. And so when I talk to your professor about sort of the job and whether you can do it, I assure you can, because I certainly didn't know what it was going into it. But now I'm pretty grateful that I had the opportunity to get started from no experience, and now I'm the chief. What does the chief do? I hire people like you. I also look across the country for photographers to bring in, interview. We recently hired a guy from Grand Rapids, Michigan. On a day-to-day, what I do when I'm not doing the administrative stuff and not looking for photographers, I work with a reporter. We're assigned a story in the mornings. We talk about how we want to approach the story. We talk about the visuals, who are we going to speak to, how we want to present the information to our audience, and then we are on the clock. We have a deadline every single day. Typically, we're in the 4 o'clock newscast, and we're in the 5 o'clock newscast, and the 6 o'clock newscast. So if my understanding is correct, you guys get assigned something on one week, and then you turn it the following week, correct? Sound about right? Yeah. So I basically do that 2 or 3 times a day. And so the deadline is always looming, and it can be pretty exciting when you have that coming and your job depends on it. I look forward to watching a lot of your guys' work. I brought a few examples of some stories that I did. One of the other things we had talked about before class is don't get discouraged when your stuff doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to. There's no such thing as a perfect story. Every single day I can tear apart my own work and say that wasn't perfect, I wanted this, I wanted that. You're going to run into all sorts of troubleshooting problems. Yesterday I was telling, do you go by Professor Cribbs?
Yeah, sure.
Prof.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I was telling him about my day started at 4 o'clock in the morning. I drove up to the shuttle launch in Cape Canaveral, and I worked with a reporter all day, and at 5 o'clock they scrubbed it. So we did all this work to put a great story together, and they ended up canceling the shuttle launch anyways. 18 hours worth of work, and it was all for nothing. We still were live with the story, but it wasn't what we were hoping for. So don't get discouraged if your lav mic windscreen falls off. If your audio isn't completely clean, there's going to be mistakes like that all the time. I'm sure you might find a couple things that you're going to scratch your head and say, hey, Scott, that wasn't perfect. But that's the nature of the business. It's not an industry where there's a lot of time to polish. Your deadline is every single day, and so you kind of have to just swallow whatever pride and say, this is how it's going to be today. Let's send it back to the newsroom and let's get it on air. So I guess I'll show a couple examples. Let's see if I can do this. Hey. All right. Like you guys, I use YouTube. This was the day after Hurricane Irma. I was sent to LaBelle, Florida for flooding with Chad Oliver. If you watch the news, you can catch Chad Oliver. He's an anchor at 11 and noon on NBC2.
Tonight, the National Guard moved in with an urgent message to leave.
Because you have flow coming in here. It's fine.
Homes off Comanche Street, surrounded by water.
Okay, I'll carry you, Bubba.
He rode out Irma with his dogs.
I got 3 more in here. I got 3 more little ones.
He lives a few blocks away from the Thompson family.
There was this strong storm in it, and it knocked down all the trees.
Now 4-year-old Daphne is seeing what happens after a hurricane. This is not storm surge from the Caloosahatchee.
No, this is going to be from the north.
All the rainfall flowing south is giving Irma survivors more reason to keep praying.
God was with us again.
Debbie Hammond is looking at what's left.
And of course, they took the T-top off the boat.
Irma snapped trees, ripped nails from boards, and carried the roof of Debbie's barn across her yard.
The wind actually blew the boat forward and the horse trailer forward.
Her horses are okay. So too is the big oak in the back that also survived Hurricane Donna.
A lot of people like to come here and use it as a backdrop for pictures too.
Given Irma's devastation, many are turning to the Red Cross for help.
And that's where we're going now. I got all my babies with me. Y'all babies ready?
One town, like so many in Southwest Florida, united,
I'm not sure. I don't know.
yet uncertain about when life will return to normal. In LaBelle, Chad Oliver, NBC2.
Yeah.
Did you write what you had to read before you edit the video or after you edit the video? How is that process?
So we shoot everything. We get all of our B-roll, we get all of our interviews, and then we decide, as a team, we have enough for a story. Whenever you're out in the field, typically you just have a computer to log all your stuff. So the minute we're like, okay, we're good, we ingest everything onto the laptop or the desktop in one of the live trucks. The reporter usually goes through all the interviews and picks the sound bites that they want. And then we also talk about, how do we want to begin the story? What parts do we think are definitely things we want to include in the story? And we sort of hash that process out. Reporter usually does the majority of the writing, but the photographer definitely has input as far as here are the things that we definitely want to include. And then once they put a script together comprised of, as tracks and sound bites, then he hands it over to me. He voices it, and then I edit it. And then we sort of watch it, say, what do we want to do differently? What do we want to add? And that's sort of how the process goes.
I really like that transition you did in the beginning when it went down to the water and then it kind of came out and do another shot.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a pretty non-traditional cut.
This is a little non-traditional, with a lot of movement.
Absolutely, and you guys probably noticed not 100% steady on all my shots. There's sort of a compromise you make sometimes when you're following action. That guy's in the middle of the water. I'm not going to take my $9,000 ENG camera out into the middle of the water, but my $200 GoPro is a great tool for getting close when I know I'm going to get wet, I think I had some waders on. Instead of lugging that out there, I just, went right along with it, got as close to him, got as close to the water as possible. That's kind of, my goal every day is to try and show people and humans as naturally as possible. And sometimes to do that, you got to get close with sort of, the lens. So GoPro's great for that. Yeah.
How many shots of B-roll did you have to take for that and for this video alone? And,
Sure.
And what's the average amount of B-roll?
Yeah.
Average seconds amount?
Sure. When I train people, I say you shouldn't have less than 40 shots whenever you shoot a package. My shots, there's a lot of, like I said, non-traditional shots in the package where I'm just sort of following action. So I probably didn't roll for 10 seconds on 40 clips. But that's sort of the goal, is to make sure for a minute 15, minute 30 package, you're probably going to want 40 different variety of shots.
And it's 3 to 6 seconds.
So little advice for anybody that shoots B-roll. I like rock solid photography besides all the actiony stuff. Shots like this, have patience. Set it nicely like that, hit record and get your hands off of it. If it's just B-roll where you're not following something, count to 10. Get a nice steady shot that not only you can use, but there's editors back at the station that'll thank you when they're trying to use your B-roll, and they actually have a nice clean 5 to 6 seconds in the middle there, because when you press record, tripod bounces for a couple seconds. Yeah.
How long would it typically take you, like the process of just like figuring out what B-roll you want to use and what like clips you want to use, like when you choose if you should put it where you want it to be?
Sure. So I usually, whenever I ingest, I immediately tell my reporter, "You're good to go. Start logging." All the time you're under deadline. And so once they're sort of logging, depending on where we are, if we're back at the station, I can also just pull it up and watch my stuff. If we're out in the field, I kind of have to let them use the computer, and I'm sort of just waiting. But typically, once they're done logging is when I'm scrubbing through my own B-roll looking for good opportunities for sequencing, for nats. I'm looking at that sort of while they're, I guess, putting together a script. And then I'm, kind of chiming in saying, "Hey, look at this." So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. How we doing on time?
Oh, fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we're fine.
I could show another. Let's see. This is this year's composite. Okay. So I'll just hit play. The next story, Judd, you're probably Professor Cribbs. You're probably familiar with this story. Back in, let me not get this wrong, 2008. Yeah, 2008. There was an officer with Fort Myers Police that was killed downtown Fort Myers. And this was a story we did on the anniversary of that.
Downtown Fort Myers, where the sights and sounds of an active nightlife blend harmoniously with a rich history.
Oh, this building is over 100 years old.
The Edison Theater,
The one is most notable and well done,
an old courthouse,
which is on the National Register, by the way.
stand out.
You know, somebody will stop and see some kind of plaque.
Others
And for us, this is kind of like sacred ground.
need a timely reminder.
It's a very special place.
For Lieutenant Roger Valdivia, Fort Myers Police Department, Main Street will always be associated with July 18th, 2008.
There's not a time I don't drive down the street and I can't think about what happened.
Officer Andrew Windman was on patrol downtown that night. The husband and father of 3 had joined the department just 2 years earlier.
Very compassionate Showed a lot of empathy.
It was 2 a.m. Bars were closing, emptying clubgoers into the packed streets. Among the crowd was Abel Orengo, violent felon with a history of holdups.
22 felony charges on his record at the time.
Orengo got into a fight with his girlfriend in this parking lot. By the time Whitman and other officers got there, Orengo had bolted for Patio de Leon. Whitman spotted him and ran after him.
And Abel was facing that one in. This is when Andy comes running. And then that's when he raised his hand, or this hand, and shot out.
Over the next few minutes, there were 4 more firefights. 22 shots fired. Miraculously, no one else was shot. Then Valdivia and 2 other officers were in a standoff with Orengo at the intersection of Main and Broadway.
Here comes Newberry, right to my side, and then Gagnon, right to this side. His mind was made up where he was going to go with this and how this was going to end.
Orengo stood in the middle of the road, ready to fire his last 2 bullets.
Everything kind of went into slow motion. A gun going off right next to my face right here. I could feel the heat of his gun along my cheek. I saw him go down, and I told Alan, I said, you got him, you got him?
Officer Alan Gagnon shot and killed Orengo. The threat was over, but the pain was just settling in. Valdivia was Whitman's supervising officer that night. He says it took him weeks to find the courage to talk to Whitman's wife, Susanna.
You're responsible. You're responsible to make sure, you're responsible to make sure that all your guys and all your girls are going to go home. And that night, somebody didn't go home.
From the city's loss came Whitman's legacy. In 2011, the Andrew Whitman Act was signed into law. It allows judges to issue warrants for someone facing a criminal charge who already violated probation related to a different crime. It's a law that could have kept Orengo off the street that night. The street where Andrew Whitman lost his life, where the rest of us go about our daily lives.
I'll never forget it, and I'll make sure people don't forget it, as long as I'm working here.
That's a different story. Sure.
How were you able to transition the footage from it going to black and white to color?
It's pretty easy with nonlinear editing nowadays. You can basically just I put a layer of colored video on top of a layer that you can just add a black and white effect, and basically you can bring down the top layer of video, kind of like a dissolve from black and white to color. Yeah.
I really loved everything. Went from had many levels to it.
Yeah.
But I was particularly wondering about the shot with the police cars.
Mm-hmm.
Was that something fast, or did they happen to be there, like all of them? You know?
Which?
There's like a shot in the middle where there's like 5 or 4 police cars in the street, all with their.
Oh, so that's file video. That's that was previously recorded back in 2008 from whoever was on scene. Most news stations keep a pretty extensive archive of all the video that was shot. So most times you can recall previous stories and use them for video. Which a lot of that, anything you saw that had like police sort of the pictures and all that sort of stuff. That's all stuff that I didn't shoot necessarily, but I went and collected and incorporated into the story. Get you in a second. Fresh hand back there.
I really liked the whole piece. The first couple of shots where it was kind of like time lapse. Did you use like photography or like tape that and just kind of like slow down?
You talking about like the streets and like the fire twirlers? Yeah. So we went downtown. when you guys get like a week to work on a story, I got some time to work on this one. This is what they call like a special project, something that airs during the sweeps periods. And so we went before the story aired, like a week before, and we just went downtown, and I think I lowered the shutter speed on that. That way it had like sort of the traces and the streaks. And I think we put a lavalier mic right next to like the fire twirling so that we pick up that sound. But yeah, that we wanted to sort of, we knew it was going to be difficult not having video of Abel Orango and that night before any of the chaos happened. We knew that was going to be difficult to visualize, so we wanted to go downtown and sort of do something a little more stylized that kind of, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's that day so much, and that's kind of what we did. Yeah, lower the shutter speed. Yeah. Sure.
When you were I like the PC, when you were filming the beginning with like the dancing and the fire, did you get a lot of people coming up to you asking you what you were doing?
All the time. That's one of the special things about being a news photographer. People like to talk to you. Yeah, we constantly get questions about what we're doing. We constantly get comments about what we're doing. They're not always the nicest, but you try to be polite and steer people either into your interview or hopefully if they're bothering you, they just walk away. Yes?
Did you use a slider for those shots?
We did. So that's not my camera, the one that I have set up there. I don't use DSLRs so much because in news gathering, they can be, there's a lot of setbacks with DSLRs for everyday use. But on a special projects piece like this, I borrowed a DSLR from one of my friends, and I had a slider out there to get those shots of downtown.
Some of those shots look like not enough space to put a broadcast camera in there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think that water shot was a GoPro too. I like to use GoPros. I'm starting to incorporate DSLRs more, and a lot of the time I'm simply using the big ENG camera. Yeah.
How about the police audio?
So the gentleman we interviewed for the story, he kind of puts together a presentation every year or every so often about that incident, and he has the whole sort of archive of those audio recordings that he gave to us.
So you get permission from them to?
Yeah, it's probably public record. You could probably get that like anywhere, but that's how we got it that day. Yeah.
It's gonna be like an odd question, but
There's no such thing.
I assume that the people that you hire them at levels. So let's just say like if you were to hire some of us, like we would be at level 0 versus the 2 people that you hired previously from this semester, they would be like a level 2 by now or something like that.
Right.
So with that, with a piece like this, you said it took like a week to construct and like put together and stuff. Would you ever put a level 0 on this level just to see if they could actually like put it together or like look at their shots and like coach them to that level?
So I will say that this was something that aired last year, and I have almost 10 years experience. Probably not.